Welcome back, GED scholars, to another social studies video, and we're going to talk about interpreting words and ideas when we read different passages on the social studies exam, and even when we look at images like political cartoons or maps. So it's really important for you to understand that words have different meanings in different contexts. And so when it comes to social studies, there are words, there are phrases that have a different meaning that you may not be aware of because you don't read that word in the sense of, well, this came in a social studies passage. So in this lesson, we are going to make sure that you understand that concept, and we're going to look at some examples as well, especially when it comes to interpreting the information you will see on the social studies exam. Remember, folks, the Reasoning Through Language Arts exam and the Social Studies exam have a lot of skills that overlap. So it's really important to make sure you pay attention to that, because once you're done with one of the exams and you're switching to the next exam, you can pull those skills, you can take those notes that you took for one exam and apply them to the other exam. So first and foremost, you want to make sure that you're improving your vocabulary. And this isn't just for GED exams, but it's also in general. You should definitely be working on your vocabulary. That's where reading comes into play. The more you read, the more you are exposed to different types of words that you may not be exposed to when you're speaking with someone or with the people that you have around you. So it's really important that we improve our vocabulary. Once again, we do that through reading. And so when it comes to the GED exams, though, we want to make sure that when we are reading these different passages, whether it's in the social studies exam, the RLA exam, the science exam, even the math exam, we are looking up words that we don't recognize or we don't know the definition of. You don't want to be reading a passage while you're practicing, especially while you're taking the exam, and come upon a word and just kind of skip over the word and think that it doesn't matter whether or not I know the definition of the word. Yes, it does, folks. It is super important to know the definition of these words because it's going to help you when it comes to the questions, and it's going to help you when it comes to finding the correct answer. So when it comes to words, you need to make sure you know that there are two types of meanings that can come into play with words. So the first one that we see right here, it says denotation is referring to the word's literal meaning. So that means what the meaning is that you would find in a dictionary. And folks, if you don't have a dictionary, like a book dictionary, that's okay, because we have the internet and Google does a great job defining words. And we're about to look at the different things that Google offers when it comes to finding different word definitions, how to pronounce it, but that'll be in a moment. So there's the denotative meaning, which means that it's the dictionary meaning of the word. And then we see after that connotation, which is referring to a word's secondary or implied meaning, usually depending on the context. And this is where we see slang come into play. And we all know slang. These are words that we use that have different meanings. For example, back in my day, and this is a great way to age yourself, when you saw someone who had really nice clothes or their shoes were nice, you would say, hey, your shoes are sick or they're ill. And so that's slang. There's a connotative meaning behind that word. It's not like the ill, I'm sick, but it's just saying like it looks really cool. So we need to make sure we understand that all of the different words in our vocabulary, and we have a large vocabulary, folks. Remember, this is American English language, grammar and vocabulary. You want to make sure you know the words. Once again, if you don't have a dictionary, like a book dictionary, that's okay because we have the internet. And say, for example, you are taking the social studies exam and you are on the economics questions that they might have. It's important for you to know some of the different vocabulary that is used when you're reading economics passages. And once again, you don't want to read a word, not know what it means, and just skip over it thinking, it's okay, I don't need to know the definition of this one, I'll figure it out. So we have an example in front of us, and it's telling us that questions 1 and 2 refer to the charts and this little bit of information. So the passage reads, a country's balance of trade, and it's nice that they underlined it for us, but we're going to highlight it too. So a country's balance of trade is the difference between the total value of a country's exports and the total value of its imports. If its total exports are more than its total imports, the country has trade surplus. If its total imports are more than its total exports, it has a trade deficit. And if you're like, well, what if I read a word and I don't know how to pronounce it? Don't worry, folks, because I'm about to show you in a second how Google can help you when it comes to the pronunciation in different words. So let's go ahead and pull up Google to help us out with the words that we've just highlighted. So we've pulled up Google and we're going to go ahead and look up the words. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click in their search bar and I'm going to type the word or the phrase that I need explained to me. So the first one that we highlighted was balance of trade. So I'm going to do balance of trade. And then do you see how I typed it out in like within the second one, and it's usually within the first or second one, it's definition. You could click on this and it'll give you the definition. Or if none of that comes up, like if you're like, it showed me a list and there was nothing that had definition, after you type in the word or phrase that you want Google to share with you the meaning of, just go ahead and put DEF, and that's enough. You don't even need to put definition, and you can just hit enter, and then Google will bring up the definition of the word. So as we can see, when we scroll down, it lets us know it's the difference in value between a country's imports and exports, which makes sense because what we just read, that little passage, was talking to us about imports and exports. So it obviously makes sense for the passage to use a phrase that relates to what you're reading about. So then you can definitely make sure, scroll down, see if there's other definitions of the word. Because this is an economics passage that you're reading, I'm not surprised that Investopedia showed up. When it comes to learning about economics, I used to always tell my students this is a great resource, a great website to learn a lot about just not only economics, but like the financial world. So definitely make sure you take a peek at that. If you need the phrase or the word translated for you, Google also offers that on most of the pages where it's sharing the definition of the word with you. It'll let you know, like, hey, you can choose from a lot of different languages to help you when it comes to studying. So if you don't understand the word in English because you speak another language, translate it to your own language. If you're like, I don't speak another language and I still didn't know the definition, that is totally okay, folks. There are so many words out there. And so it's common for people to not know the definition of a word. Once again, thank you, Google. Thank you, technology. One of the other words that I wanted us to definitely look was the last one, or it's the phrase, or it's two words. It's trade deficit. Deficit. So when we look at the definition, it tells us it's the amount by which the cost of a country's imports exceeds the value of its exports. But what I really wanted us to pay attention to is right here what Google is offering it. Next to the word trade deficit, because some people may not know how to pronounce this word, totally okay. You can click on this little speaker right here and you would hear it say trade deficit. Unfortunately, I don't think you're going to be able to hear it when I click on it. The other thing too that I like is after you click on that speaker, it'll have something that says learn to pronounce. And so this is something that I let my students where English is not their first language and they have a hard time pronouncing some words. I tell them come and click on this because you can use Google to help you pronounce the word. So when you click on it, what it does is it opens up a new page. And the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the way you move your mouth or you see the person's mouth moving when they pronounce the word really helps. Another thing Google does, they tell you, well, it sounds like this. Trade deficit. So when we go ahead and click on the speaker again, notice that the mouth started moving. And if we just click on the play, you can see it over and over. So whether it's the speaker, you click on play, either one. They also give you the option to slow it down if you need it slowed down. So once again, folks, this is a tool that you can use to help you when it comes to not only pronouncing words because maybe English isn't your first language, but also when you're reading and you come up on a word and you're like, I'm so used to just skipping over words because I have a hard time pronouncing them. No, no more of that, folks. You now have a tool. If you're thinking, well, doesn't this slow me down? It doesn't slow you down. I know you think it does because you're like, oh my gosh, now I have to highlight words that I don't know. I have to, come online. I need to learn how to pronounce it. It adds up, folks. It is something that you want to do because it'll help when it comes to test time. From the last video, we talked about the learner who decided post that they studied for months and months and they studied from the Kaplan Study Guidebook. And when it came to test time, none of the stuff was on the test and it was like the easiest test for them and they passed with flying colors. And I talked about the fact that it's because they studied. Folks, studying takes time. Learning how to pronounce a word is important. So you want to make sure you're taking this tool and using it to the best of your ability to make sure you understand the word, you know how to pronounce them, and you can pass the exams with flying colors. In addition to interpreting words that you read when it comes to the different social studies passages or maps or images, you need to make sure you understand how to interpret ideas in social studies context as well. And so, ideas in social studies are presented in a certain type of way. So, one way that they might ask a question from you is that they will provide you with a timeline. And with this timeline, it's going to be in chronological order, which means that there is a beginning, there is a middle, and there is a end. And so it's important to know that when we have a timeline, there's so much you can answer from just knowing dates and events that happened during those times, during that date or the year, whatever it might be. And we're going to take a look at an example in a moment. So if they're going to show you a timeline, there is a good chance that they're obviously going to show you something that is cause and effect. And this is something that they might have within a passage where they talk about things that led up to an event, and then from that event, what ended up happening. We've talked about cause and effect for the RLA exam. And so the concept is the same here with social studies, folks, where something, is a cause and the effect of it ripples out to other things too. And once again, we'll take a peek at that in a moment. You will also see social studies exam questions shown to you with tables, which is a lot of data information in rows and columns. It's a visual way to present information that might be too lengthy to share with you, like in a written passage. So you want to make sure you pay attention to how to read tables. And then, of course, we know that you will see maps, political cartoons, and diagrams as well. And we'll take a peek at those in a moment. There is a website that I'm going to share with you in the description box below. When it comes to political cartoons, folks, because you're not familiar with them, because you don't see them all the time, they can be confusing. So this website is provided by Ohio State University, and they are basically sharing some old-time political cartoons and what they mean. So that's a really good tool to use as well. And then, of course, diagrams, and most important when it comes to social studies, folks, documents. You want to be familiar with reading documents when it comes to different things that affect US history. So things that obviously are within US history is the Declaration of Independence, the US Constitution, the Bill of Rights. But there are other things that you can read that are from other countries, like the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta is the backbone behind a lot of rights that we have here in the United States. And the Magna Carta is something that comes from England. And so it's important, folks, that once again, when it comes to studying for social studies, yes, you're going to read stuff that may not pop up on the actual exam, but once again, you're getting used to the vocabulary. You're getting used to how social studies ideas are being presented to you. So let's go ahead and look at each one of these specifically so we have a better understanding of them. First up, let's look at timelines. So as I mentioned, timelines are going to be chronological, which means that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to whatever little bit or chunk of information they are sharing with you in this timeline. And timelines, the important thing to know, folks, is that when you have a timeline, you want to make sure that if it's something like we see here, where it's on a straight line, knowing that on the left is where the year is starting, like or I should say the chunk of information that they're sharing with you is starting, and then all the way to the right is where it's going to end. So this is my beginning over here all the way to the left, and then my end is all the way to the right. When it comes to timelines, just the way it comes to every other visual, even the passages, folks, you want to make sure you're paying attention to the title because it'll tell you a lot about the information being presented. The title over here, this timeline we see, is the US Civil War. That means everything I'm going to read on this timeline has to do with the war. They're not going to throw in a piece of information that doesn't have anything to do with this US Civil War, even if it happened during the same time period as one of these battles, like we're seeing here in this timeline. They're not going to do that because the title is letting us know that everything you're about to read on this timeline has to do with the US Civil War. Next thing you want to do is you want to notice the benchmark dates. Once again, we started off by knowing that, okay, the furthest to the left is going to be my beginning. The furthest to my right is going to be my end. That doesn't mean that's the beginning and end of the Civil War. That means it's the beginning and end of this timeline that they're presenting to us. And so obviously, once we know we have a concept of like, this is what I'm looking at, you want to then look at the data or the information shared. So for this one, we definitely know the beginning of the timeline is starting in 1861, and it tells us right up here that that was the Battle of Bull Run. And then the rest of the timeline, the setup that we see is similar. It's going to share the date with us, and then it's going to share what happened during that date within the Civil War. Okay. And if you go from left to right, folks, you'll read everything they're talking about has to do with the Civil War. So it's really important that you make sure you pay attention to the timeline, the benchmark dates, and the data and the information shared. Know that when your timelines are horizontal, like we see here on the screen, you're reading it from left to right, the same way we would if you're reading a passage. Now, there are timelines that they will present where they're vertical, it's from top to bottom, and you want to make sure you pay really close attention to those folks. Pay attention to the dates because they might start off by, having 1863 up here and something that happened in 1863, and then down here it's 1861. And so it's kind of like, oh, wait, did I just read that backwards? It's not that you read it backwards. It's just that you need to, once again, pay attention. Look at the beginning date and the end date to make sure you have a better understanding of how does this timeline flow. Because if I have one that's vertical and at the top is 1863 and the bottom is 1861, I'm going to actually start from the bottom and read my way up because I don't want to be doing, a Back to the Future reading backwards. I want to see what are the causes that take place over here to make the effects that happened after that year. So another way, obviously, to read the timeline is a vertical stance, but the same rules apply to vertical or horizontal. Pay attention to the title, pay attention to benchmark dates, and pay attention to the data and information shared because the question they are going to ask you is about that timeline. No other information except what they present you. Next up, cause and effect. And folks, as I mentioned, there is a reasoning through language arts exam video that we shared because believe it or not, you will see cause and effect questions on the RLA exam. And as I mentioned in the introduction to this video, there are a lot of skills you'll use on that exam that can be used on the social studies exam and vice versa. So pay attention to those skills, hold on to them, hold on to the notes, so then you can see how those skills were used with the other exams. Interpreting cause and effect is very similar to a timeline. We know that when we have a timeline, there are things that happen before an event that lead to it, and that's going to be our cause and effect. So if I have, the U.S. Revolution happening right here, well, there are all these other events that took place on my timeline, right? Well, same thing. Look what we have right here with these boxes, these colorful boxes, showing us the cause and effect taking a place. So we have an event right here, like I said, the American Revolution, and we have all of these different causes that led up to it. And then after these causes took place, yes, this American Revolution is an effect of the causes right there, but this is my main effect. And so from this main effect, I then have, because it's going to be the cause of these effects. So once again, cause and effect, very similar to the concept of a timeline. Things will happen. For example, taxing the colonists without representation, which ended up leading to the skirmishes that the colonists had between them and the king's soldier, which eventually led to the American Revolution. And after the American Revolution, we then won our independence. We created a new form of government, and the U.S. Constitution was written and adopted. So cause and effect, folks, we live our lives with this, right? The cause is an action or occurrence that makes another event happen, and the effect is what happens as a result of that cause. So even these causes that we see here on the left that are in orange, these came about because of other things. The whole, taxing the colonists, that came about because before this American Revolution, there was the French and Indian War. And so that took place, which led to the British government saying, we need to tax you guys to pay for that war, which then, of course, trickled down to all of these other things that we see to the right. So make sure you understand the concept of cause and effect, how to read it, and how to understand that even if it's within a timeline and you're like, I got it. If they give you it in a diagram like I have right here, you're like, I got it. Make sure you understand that when you read a passage where there's words, you can go ahead and identify the cause and the effect or effects. And if you're like, I need more than what you're sharing on the screen, once again, folks, please remember there is a video where we talk about cause and effects, compare and contrast. We talked about it in the lens of the reasoning through language arts exam, but take a peek at that video. It might help you a lot with the concept of identifying a cause and the effect in a written passage. Next up, we have tables. And you might see, folks, a table presented to you with information, and then the questions are based off of that table. So when it comes to tables, we know that they have rows. Rows are horizontal, and they have columns. Columns are going to be vertical. So once again, same thing when it came to the timeline. You want to make sure you pay attention to the title of the table, the title of the rows and the columns. If there's a legend, and there is a legend down here, folks, with this second table that we see, they don't title it legend, they title it key. So that's another word they might use. But it's telling us that every circle equals two Smarties. So this is the legend. This is them telling us, like, hey, don't count each one of these circles as one circle equals two. So for example, this top row right here, we see 1, 2, 3, and then half of one. So it's not saying 3.5, it's saying, well, one circle equals two. So we have 2, 4, 6, and half of one would be one, right? If the whole circle is two, half of it is one. So 2, 4, 6, 7. So then we know, okay, well, the frequency is 7. If for some reason they didn't have the frequency and you needed to count it out. But there might be a legend, so you want to pay attention to the legend. The benchmarks, the dates, the text, the data, information, all of that you need to make sure you're paying attention to. So when we come up here, we see the title is Enrollment, University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. And so we know that, okay, this is an enrollment for a university in the state of Wisconsin. And for this table, we also see that they are giving us titles for the columns. They're giving us years up here. And then to the far left, we see that the rows also have titles. They're giving us the title of the year students could be in. So freshman is your first year, sophomore second, third year, fourth year. Graduate is after you graduate with a bachelor's degree. If you're like, I want to go back, I want to get a master's degree or a PhD, that's graduate school. So this table would have questions based off of the different levels that they would see, somebody would see at a university, and then obviously the 3 years presented to you. And if you're like, well, what type of questions would it be like that would be so difficult? They wouldn't be asking you like simple questions like, what was the enrollment number for seniors in the year 2000? No, instead they might ask you a question like, out of the 3 years shown, what is the highest number of like juniors and sophomores combined in 1 year? And if you're like, oh my gosh, are they going to make me add? They might, folks. They might ask you like, hey, what's the average? What's the, median number? But the nice thing is that you'll have your calculator. You can use the on-screen calculator to figure that out. So don't panic about things like that. But once again, make sure you understand that table. The table down here we see is interesting because although they're giving us frequency numbers all the way to the right, they're showing us as visuals the little circles that we see. And once again, down here, we have our legend that they're calling a key. So one circle equals two Smarties. And then we have the colors too. I don't know what type of table this is, why they felt it was necessary to color code things and to draw circles, in addition to giving you the actual frequency that the circles represent. But hey, as long as you know how to read a table, you'll be perfectly fine on this exam for some of the questions. Remember, one, maybe two of the questions will include a table. Doesn't mean you skip learning how to read tables. It means you learn how to read them. And then if you don't have a table question, you're lucky, and don't worry about it. On to the next exam. Next up, social studies questions might include you looking at a map and interpreting the map. In our last video, we had a question that provided us a map of the East Coast, and it had to do with the settlements that took place. I think like it was the settlements of like 1650 or something, but they only gave us kind of like an outline of the East Coast. But then some of the answer choices was like all of North America. And I was, making sure in that video, the way I'm about to say it right here, you need to look at a map, and definitely a map of the United States, which is what we have here in front of us, but definitely take a look at the map of the world as well, just to have a good understanding of where the United States is in relation to other countries. So when it comes to maps, though, you want to make sure you understand that there's a lot going on with maps, right? There are maps where they won't have words, but they'll still have a lot of other information. So one of the things we want to pay attention to are scales. Scales, and you probably might have a hard time seeing it. So let me zoom in really quickly. So this box right over here, this is our legend. Like there's a lot of information being shared, and most maps will have information like that. This is the scale down here. So what they're saying is like this little distance that you might see is going to, represent like 1 mile or, 100 miles or whatever it might be. So it's just another way to understand that even though if I was to take a ruler, and be like, oh, this map is exactly 6 inches wide, that's not a true representation of the actual distance, from one side of the country to the other. And so we see those scales taking place. So this is the legend that we see. And then within the legend, and I apologize, folks, because it's kind of hard to see in like most maps that share so much information, they're telling you like, hey, when there's a big star within a circle, that's the national capital of the United States of America. And then it's sharing us like, well, this is the sign for state capitals and cities and things like that. So definitely pay attention to the legend that you would see in a map. It may not be a definite question you'll see on the exam, but you want to understand what the lines of longitude and lines of latitude are imaginary lines that form like the exact location on the earth. And so latitude lines run from east to west, so they're basically going horizontal. And this is what we mean with horizontal, right? So it's kind of like a straight line from your left to your right or right to your left. And then we have longitude lines, and those lines run from north to south. So, from top to bottom or bottom to top. And so the thing is that when it comes to longitude and latitude, when it comes to the actual GED exam, the likelihood that they'll ask you, like, what is the exact position of these lines is slim to none. But once again, it's important for you to know this type of information. Just so you have a better understanding of what it is they're presenting you with. And then right here, we see it's important to know the symbols or the legend. And that's what we looked at over here, folks, in the far right-hand corner to help us with the scales. The scales were within the legend itself. Titles, obviously, you want to pay attention to. If there's not a title, this is where knowing what the world map looks like comes into play, because if you were to be shown this map, you would be like, oh, I know where this is. This is the United States. And then we have right here compass rose. So when it comes to maps, folks, this image right here that you see that I'm circling is a compass rose. And every map, and over here on our map, I'm circling it right here, we have a compass rose. It's kind of tucked in under Texas and the Gulf of Mexico. So your compass rose is going to tell you which way is north, which way is south, which way is west, which way is east. Most every map I've seen shows the compass rose with north at the very top, which means then that west and east are going to be, obviously to the left of the north, to the right of the north, and then down here we have south. So when we look at our map that we see here of the United States, and I know this is north up here, that's why I said Canada is our neighbor to the north, and Mexico is our neighbor to the south. Over here to the left, this is the west coast of the United States, and this is where we have Washington, Oregon, and California. And then when we come to the east coast of the country, we have all of these states right over here that make up the east coast. And so that map that we saw in our last video was only showing the east coast. So we knew that when we came up to those answer choices that were like, the Dutch took over North America, we weren't able to say, yeah, that's a good answer, because the map was only showing us the east coast of the United States. So that's the other thing too, folks, when it comes to maps, learn the, what the entire country looks like, but pay attention to, okay, well, what are things, or what are some states that I can remember that are on the East Coast? So if I was to see a map of only the East Coast, I'd be like, that's the map of the East Coast of the United States. The number one sign I would say to use is Florida. Florida's down here, folks. Right down here, and I'm trying to circle it, but it's not circling very well. So if you look at a map and you're like, I know that's Florida, then you're looking at the east coast of the United States. For those of you who are like, well, what about, Hawaii or Alaska? Over here, folks, we see in this small side box where they show us Alaska. And if you're like, I don't understand, why is Alaska in like this little side box? Because Alaska is a state that's actually up here. Like if the map was bigger, it's actually up here It's connected to Canada. It's not adjacent to any of the other 48 states that we see here on, quote unquote mainland. And then within that box, here it is right here in a tinier box, it's showing us Hawaii, and Hawaii are islands that are states. And those are going to be way out here in the Pacific Ocean. And that's why you don't see it on this map. That's why they include them down here. We understand compass rose is really important to make sure you're paying attention to. And then any type of label is also important. As we see on the map that we have on our screen right now, there are a lot of labels as far as like telling us the name of the state and then the cities, it tells us what the capital of the state is. And as you can see, a lot of other information. So just make sure that when it comes to maps, definitely know what the US map looks like. And then how does the US map look like in comparison to a world map? And you should be good to go with those types of questions when it comes to the social studies exam. Political cartoons that we know are going to take place on the social studies exam, you're bound to have one political cartoon. Now, how far back that political cartoon goes, I don't know. But as I mentioned, I have a link in the description box below to a site from Ohio State that has picked a few of the political cartoons from back in the day to help explain it to you. Because although you don't need to know like exactly everything that led up to the political cartoon you're looking at, it's a good thing to have a good understanding of what it is you're looking at in order to answer the questions. So political cartoons are intended to make political or social statements. They share the point of view of the artist, and usually that's the same point of view of the public. Political cartoon are exaggerations, they're caricatures of what's happening, or it might be an exaggerated representation of a person. I'll let you know, most of the political cartoons from back in the day, folks, whenever they talk about a politician, like I'm circling right here, the politician is a overweight person running, and it's usually an overweight man. Very rarely is it a woman. But they have top hats, they're, running, they're screaming, they're saying something, just being mindful of stuff like that. So if you were to visit the website that the Ohio State University is sharing with you, you'll notice that there are a whole bunch of different cartoons. This is the one that we are seeing on the screen. And if you were to scroll down, like it actually gives you a write-up of what I'm assuming was in the paper with this political cartoon. And it'll just help you understand what is going on, because there's a lot going on in this image. We have a guy, with an axe that has vote on it. This tree right here says saloon, and he's chopping it down. There's, the politicians running to them. And then I know you can't see it on the screen, but once again, if you visit this website offered by the university, you could zoom in and read it. But this little text is what this politician is screaming, and so it just helps you have a better understanding of the political cartoons you're looking at, what you might see when it comes to the exam. And as I mentioned, this is something where you can go ahead, click on the cartoon. This has to do with prohibition, like the other one did. And so prohibition was the time period in the United States where they were saying alcohol was illegal, and a lot of stuff happened because of prohibition, cause and effect, folks. So it's really important to just take a peek at it, look at these different cartoons. There's a good chance that one of the cartoons you might see on the social studies exam is going to have to do with, something that happened during prohibition. And so, as I mentioned, it's really important to just make sure you're studying well to have a good understanding of what you might see on the exam. Like when I say might, I mean like exactly the same thing. But the thing is that you're studying because you're going to see things like this. You're going to see political cartoons like this. You're going to see tables like the ones we saw, or, timelines like the one we saw. It may not be the exact one, right? You're not going to get a study guide book and they're going to be like, here are exactly everything you'll see on the GED exam. No, what are you doing? You're studying. You're getting comfortable with that type of information, that type of context, the type of methods they're sharing with you. So when it comes to this political cartoon right here, it's okay if you're like, I don't understand exactly what is being said, as long as you can break down everything to kind of have a better understanding. Like, for example, well, there's a lot of symbols, right? When I say symbols, I mean, how many times have you seen an axe with the word vote on it, right? So that obviously means something. The tree has the word saloon. If you're like, I don't know what the word saloon means, remember, use Google, use your dictionary to figure out the word. But saloon is another word for a bar that serves alcohol. So right then and there, you should be like, oh, so knowing that this dude with the axe, who's obviously cutting down the tree that says saloon, he obviously doesn't seem to like places that sell alcohol. This guy doesn't right here with the axe that says vote. Okay, so now you kind of have a better understanding. Keep going with figuring out what's going on. Labels and captions. Okay, well, the captions down here is coming from our politician that we see running. And if you can't see, I apologize once again. If you were to zoom in, the politician is shouting the stuff as he's running. And so, okay, now I have an understanding. He looks like he's panicking because this guy is cutting down the tree, which stands for the saloon, and he's cutting it down with an axe that says vote. I'm getting a better understanding of what this political cartoon means. So, once again, folks, even though you may see something like this and you're like, I don't really understand it, break it apart. Look at all the little pieces here and there, have a better understanding. And when it comes to the actual question, look at your answer choices. And then, based on all the information, the evidence you've gathered, start kicking out the answer choices where you're like, nope, that's not true. Nope, that's not true. Nope, there's no evidence to support this answer choice in what I am seeing. And you'll do perfectly fine, folks. Next up, folks, diagrams. So diagrams, as you can see from the visuals we have, will show relationships between different pieces of information. And you need to just make sure you understand that diagrams are not charts, they are not graphs. Okay, so like this top one that we see right here, this is our Venn diagram. So when you have Venn diagrams, they have two different things in the larger circles. So on the left, I have this oranges in this left circle, and then apples in this right circle. And then what I have overlapping is what these two, the orange and the apple, share in common. So whatever I read over here in the orange circle is all about oranges. Whatever I read over here with the apples is just for apples. But when it comes to a Venn diagram, which is what we have here, whatever is in the middle where the circles are overlapping and the information shared in here has to do with both oranges and apples. So Venn diagrams, VENN, are a way to show a relationship between two things that have, different qualities, but then they also have qualities that are shared. This diagram that we see down here is a bubble diagram where the main point or the main talking piece is right in the middle. For this one, it's leadership and data. And everything that is coming from that is talking about different things within the leadership and data. Well, you have to plan, you have to design, you have to construct, you have to test it and maintain it and train it. So once again, folks, just understand that diagrams are not charts, they're not graphs, and you may not get any diagrams on the exam, but you need to understand what diagrams are and how to read them correctly in order to answer the question that comes along with it. And last but not least, folks, obviously you're going to read passages that come from different types of documents. And so I've shared with you that you want to make sure you are reading documents that are going to be coming from US history, like the Declaration of Independence, the US Constitution, the Bill of Rights, but you also want to make sure you're looking at other documents too. And if you're like, well, how would I know the different documents when it comes to US history? As I mentioned, folks, let's use the internet and yet let's use it wisely. There are different places you can go online to take a peek at these different types of US documents. And so I have links for you in the description box below. And as I mentioned, Khan Academy is a great resource when you are learning. So please make sure you take advantage of that as well. So, folks, I'm always telling you to use technology wisely. So, even for your social studies exam, I'm going to jump over to Google and I am going to put in interpret words and ideas, and then, of course, attach GED to it so it narrows your search. It will give you the AI overview, will share information that you want to make sure you pay attention to. Notice that they start off by telling you when it comes to identifying or interpreting words and ideas and the reasoning through language arts exam. Remember, folks, the RLA and the social studies exam have a lot of skills that overlap. And then it goes into the social studies test. So definitely check out this information. But as always, let's go and click on more. And then I'm going to come down to books. And you'll notice that GED, once again, like so many other of the topics that we've reviewed in the other videos we have, is sharing a preview of information from their study guide. And I always encourage you the same way I encourage my students, please go and purchase one of these study guides. I am a fan of Kaplan, but any of the other ones are great as well. So for this one, for interpreting words and ideas, I'm actually going to come down over here all the way to this one that is for the year 2022 and 23. And I'll let you know, folks, it really doesn't matter the years as long as it's a study guide from 2014 when the exam that you're going to take was written. And the reason I'm going to choose this one is, like I said, it gives you a lesson, which you want to make sure you're paying attention to, folks. But for this one that they shared, this preview, it go ahead and give you the problem as well, or the problems or questions, I should say. So we're going to actually work through this right now. We're going to read through this passage right here, and we're going to answer number 1. If you're like, hey, can you do all of these, all 5 of them? I'm going to say no. But the thing is that you can, because as you can see, it's right here on the screen, folks. Go through Google Books, take a peek at it. If you can and you can afford it, please just go and buy a Kaplan study guide for your GED. And it's one study guide for all the exams. You can go and, take care of numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5. And in the comments below, you can ask me for the answers and I will walk you through it. So we are going to read the passage and I'm going to highlight information that I want to make sure I remember because I know that I have a question to answer. So a lot of my students ask me, well, should I read the questions before I read the passage? I'm going to say that's completely up to you. I know people who will read the question and will focus so much on like what they think that they're supposed to find that they really miss a lot of other information in that passage, because guess what? There might be a second or third question that is also based on that passage. So that's completely up to you. I don't read the questions before I read the passage. This is how I've always studied ever since I was a little kid. But I do pay attention definitely to what is being said. I like to highlight and I like to take notes or annotate as I read. Yeah, highlighting and annotating can take up time, but when you practice, folks, it'll be a lot quicker. So once again, it's totally up to you. Try it out, see which one is best for you, but don't assume that just because everybody else is studying this way, I have to study this way too. So let's go ahead and start reading. So it says, from 1820 to 1870, more than 7.5 million immigrants arrived on U.S. shores. That was more people in the entire U.S. population in 1810. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight the years automatically. And I'm not going to really worry about the number of immigrants, but I'm just going to highlight it just so I know, okay, this passage is obviously talking about immigrants coming to the US. It's introducing that right off the bat. So I have an idea of what I'm about to read. So let's continue on. That was more people than the entire US population in 1810, which means that 7.5 million new folks, that's a lot. Almost all of these immigrants came from Northern Europe. I'm going to pay attention to that. And a majority were Catholic. I'm going to highlight were Catholic. Historians have often focused on what pushed. Okay, so that's important. And instead of highlighting, I'm actually going to take my red pen and I'm going to circle that. Push. Because when you're pushed, that means that whoever's back home doesn't want you there. So I just want to keep that in my mind. So historians have often focused on what pushed these immigrants out of Europe. During the 1840s, for example, so that's important. They're giving us an example. Germany experienced a series of crop failures that, combined with social upheaval, okay, I'm going to highlight that, triggered by rapid industrialization in urban areas, produced riots, civil unrest, and open rebellion. During the same years, Ireland, okay, so they're introducing a new country now. Ireland saw the infamous potato famine strike poor and working class Irish families, killing an estimated 700,000 people. So I'm going to go back to my pen because I notice what they're doing for us folks, right? They're saying, for example, and then they name Germany as the example, and they're saying Germany had crop failures, and that's one of the reasons immigrants were pushed out of their country and came to the United States. So I know that for Germany, one of the causes of immigrants feeling like they were pushed was the social upheaval that took place all because of the crop failures. So the crop failures were the main cause, and that created the effects of the riots and the unrest. And so we're going to say these are the effects And then these effects were the cause of why the Germans felt like they needed to come ahead and migrate to the US. So keep reading though, because they gave us another example, right? They said Ireland saw something similar with the potato famine, and the potato famine killed an estimated 700,000 people. So once again, I see my cause, the potato famine, the effect, it was killing people. And then this effect of its killing people is the cause of why people immigrated to the United States during the 1840s, because it's telling us the 1840s right there. We have another paragraph, so let's read that second paragraph. While those crises spurred Europeans to immigrate, a variety of factors created a simultaneous pull to immigrate to the United States. Okay, so that's interesting because the wording, notice they use pull here and they use pushed up here. So what we read up here is things that were happening in the homelands that were pushing the people out. We read about it, cause and effect. So now I know, because they're using the word pull, is now that there's something in the United States that's pulling these Europeans to come to the United States. Let's keep reading. Letters home from friends and family members who had immigrated earlier often described the United States as a land of plenty and related stories of successful employment and plentiful land. Well, there you go. The letters. The letters are what are pulling people to come to the United States. That makes sense, right? You have family and friends who are like, hey, this is like the best place to ever be. There's so much, we're not starving. There are no riots because of the crop failures. Everything is going really well in the United States. That is what they mean when they talk about the pull, because now it's not a push, it's a pull coming from the United States side. So let's keep reading though. Where did we end? Right here. Steamship companies offering passage across the Atlantic advertised with posters that showed majestic scenes of American abundance. So not only are your friends and family sending you letters saying, hey, the US has a lot going on here during the 1840s, but now steamship companies, right? They're going to be the ones that are selling you the tickets. They have the boats that are going to help you come on over. They're advertising, okay, that's a big word, advertising these majestic scenes. And if you're like, what does majestic mean? Remember, folks, you read a word, you don't know what it means, you look it up in a dictionary. If you don't have a dictionary, look it up online. Use Google to help you. But I'll tell you right now, majestic means it's impressive. There's beauty in it. It looks really good. It's majestic. So definitely, folks, once again, you want to make sure you're looking up words you don't understand. Know the definition too. So once again, on the second paragraph, we have a cause, the letters, right? And what is another cause leading people to come to the US? The steamship saying like, hey, look, we're going to show you in picture, we're going to advertise posters, and they're going to have these majestic scenes. Abundance means that there's enough to go around for everybody. So if you're like, I don't know what that word means, now you do, folks. So let's go ahead and jump into the question that we are going to answer. So it reads, according to the passage, which of the following was a cause? And that's a good thing we know to pay attention to cause and effect, right? When it's your social studies exam, always make sure you're paying attention to cause and effect, because that's a big part of social studies. So which of the following was a cause of Northern European immigration to the United States in the 1840s and 1850s? A reads, Americans' desire to double the population of the United States. I'm going to say no, because I don't remember reading anything in these two paragraphs about Americans wanting to double the population of the US. So I'm going to kick A out the window. B, efforts by Northern European governments to reduce the number of people living in poverty. Nope, I don't remember reading anything in either one of these paragraphs about Northern European governments doing anything, let alone reducing the number of people living in poverty. B, you're out the door. C, political and social instability in some Northern European countries. Okay, I like C. We read about political and social instability. If you're like, where did we read that? If you go back up to paragraph 1, folks, where it talks about Germany as the example, it goes ahead and it says there was upheaval triggered by rapid industrialization in urban areas, produced riots civil unrest, and open rebellion. So, riots, unrest, open rebellion are different types of political and social instability. And so, if you're like, I don't understand this concept, what does that mean? Like, this whole answer sounds weird to me. Folks, this is once again why you practice and why you make sure you're paying attention to how words are used in social studies context. So, when they talk about political and social instability, instability means that it's chaotic, like it's shaky grounds, like it's not a stable situation taking place. And so when we think about it that way, yeah, if you're in a country and there's riots, civil unrest means that there are people protesting. Open rebellion means that people are like publicly going after, political figures, trying to bring down the government. That is political and social instability. I like C. I think C is the answer, but I want to read D just to be sure. So D reads, efforts to spread Catholicism to the United States. Okay, right out the bat. No, not at all. The only thing they told us about Catholicism was right here at the top of the first paragraph where they said a majority of the folks that came to the US from Northern Europe were Catholic. I didn't say anything about they were trying to spread Catholicism. D is out the window, so C is our answer. And folks, hopefully you paid attention to how we were able to make sure that C is our answer by pulling on the evidence that is shared with us within the paragraphs, right? You didn't have to go anywhere else. That's how you take these exams, folks. You don't think about like, oh my gosh, I remember I read this a couple weeks ago about Northern Europe, because no, it might be correct. You might be 100% correct with whatever it is you're thinking, but just remember when they ask you a question, it has to do with what is on the exam that they are presenting you and nothing else. Hopefully this helped, folks. Remember, you can see questions 2 through 5 online. Go ahead, check them out, try to answer them, do your best. And if you think that you've got it, go ahead and leave a comment down below and I'll let you know if you're right or wrong. You know what you're doing, folks. Keep your head up. You've got this.